Hello everyone, this is Grandmaster Friedel, and today I'm resuming my Autopsy video series. So I'm a bit late with the video this week. Turns out that as tasty as a gin and tonic might be to a human being, computers do not like them. Just fair warning for you guys. Long story short, I need to get a new computer. So hopefully the video still turns out well. The computer actually should be better than my previous one, which was quite old. So forgive any technical difficulties there might be, just because it's a new machine. I'm not quite used to it, but hopefully we will do okay. So I actually had a request on a comment, and yes, I do read your comments, that we look at a game of Sam Shankland's, since he's been so successful as of late. Of course, since we're doing an autopsy, usually it's a lost game, and he hasn't lost a game in a long time. So I'm actually going to do it from the point of view of an opponent of his. To give you guys some background, I've actually known Sam a long time. When I lived in California, I'd say over 10 years ago now, I worked with him very briefly when he was about 13 years old, about 2100. He started out rather late. I knew, of course, he would be a talent. I didn't know he'd get to 2700. So I actually was able to, get a good glimpse of his thought process and how he thinks about chess. And at this point, of course, he thinks about chess probably far better than I do. But he, definitely, I got a good exposure to him. So I can actually tell you, what he thinks a little bit, probably more accurately than some other strong players. The other bonus is that I actually got to talk to him before I did this video, so I was able to get a few of his thoughts, which I'm happy to share with you guys. But mostly, I want to look at it from Black's point of view. So this was the final round of the U.S. Chess Championship this year between Sam Shankland and Awonder Liang. And for those of you who didn't follow the event, you really should have. It was quite an exciting event. Sam was actually leading the tournament, and in the last round had white against Awonder. But fast on his heels, he had Fabiano Caruana, who was half a point back and was white against Lanishuk, who was having a disastrous tournament. So almost for sure, a win is the only thing that would secure him first place. Otherwise, he'd have to play a playoff. And as it turned out, Fabiano beat Alexander rather easily, so it became necessary to win. But again, from Awonder's point of view, this is a tricky game. So Awonder had played mostly quite good chess, I'd say, in this event. He had a one loss, maybe two, but he was really holding his own. He was at 50%. He was doing really, really well for his first U.S. championship, and I believe it was his first. But in any case, he really was showing that he belonged there. He drew against Fabiano in round one and played nice chess. But it's always tricky in the last round. First of all, last rounds are just annoying by themselves. It's difficult to play well when there's a lot on the line. But not every last round game is, you're two people fighting for first place. Especially in a Swiss system tournament, a lot of the time it's one person's trying to secure first and the other person has no hope of first. And this is a round robin, which means that it's even more likely that the last round has no bearing on both players in the same way. So in this game, Sam was fighting for first, but Awonder was just fighting to have a good tournament. But he's black against the hottest player of the tournament, the person who's probably playing the best chess thus far, the most solid. So it's kind of a daunting task when you're facing someone who's playing so well. And I've definitely had this. I've never been in the last round leading the U.S. Championship. But I've actually played in the last round twice. I've played people who are fighting for first place and who are leading the event. And let me tell you, it's a lot of pressure being on that side. You wouldn't think so. You'd think that all the pressure would be on the leader. But really, they're playing full of confidence. They're, ready to bring their all. And it's really, you have to kind of bring that same level of energy, that same preparation, and I find it's very difficult. So I introduced the game a bit longer than normal, but I wanted you guys to get a sense for what these players were playing for. And of course, there's a lot of money on the line for both. So it's quite something. I doubt that Awonder was thinking about that. But I actually think his first mistake came rather early. C6. So why do I think this is a bad move, you ask? Of course I don't. However, I would say it's not one of Awonder's main weapons. And one of the things I've found is that, especially in high-pressure games, it's a little bit better to stick to your guns. Not always. There are times when a surprise is really valuable, but I would say that at least in my own experience and from those I've coached and others I knew, it's when you play something that's less familiar to you in a high pressure game, it's easier to get into trouble. So, not that, the Caro Kann is some out there opening and not that he had no knowledge, but it's a difficult choice and there is surprise value. I'm sure Sam didn't expect it. But at the same time, it's, when you're playing someone who's as strong as he is and who has Sam's opening prep, he's very versatile in the opening. You don't know exactly what system he's going to play against the Caro Kann. So it's just kind of a bit of a dubious choice, in my opinion. Of course, if he had won this game, he'd look like a genius. So you never really know. But it wouldn't have been my advice to him had I been coaching him during the event. Luckily for him, I was not. However, d4, d5, ed, cd, bishop d3. So Sam actually plays a very safe system. Keep in mind that while a win is really nice for him and secures him first place, he doesn't necessarily want to take lots of risk. A loss will probably put him out of first, whereas a draw at least gives him a shot at a playoff. So really, a 2-result position where he doesn't have to play with much risk is really the optimal. So knight c6, c3, knight f6, bishop f4. This is fairly theoretical. Bishop g4, queen b3. And here, Awonder blitzed out, and he played this all very quickly, a prepared idea of his. He played e5. Exciting move. Really, really interesting chess. Clearly, he had done his homework. And there are all sorts of issues that white faces. For example, if you play d takes e5, which is most logical, knight h5, and you're going to give up this pawn. The bishop probably has to move away. You take this pawn, and the board's a mess, but at the same time, black has lots of activity. If you take with the bishop, you allow this nasty pin, and after knight takes e5, it's going to be rather annoying. A move like f4 is a little bit too much. You can even just play knight here, threatening f6. Knight takes f4 is in the air. I would say this is actually really bad for white. And of course, you can try taking on b7, but then e takes f4, queen takes check, bishop d7. This isn't the only option, but I would say that with white's king the way it is, this queen getting chased around, it's at the very least unclear. But Sam blitzed out a response right away, and this put Awonder in the tank. He played h3. Now, if Awonder were trying to figure out what to do, and he came up with the move e5 on his own, and he faced h3 and started to think, I'd be like, okay, that's certainly understandable. But if you prepare e5, presumably with a computer, almost for sure, and you face h3 and you don't know what to do, it usually means that you prepared a little bit sloppy. Now, of course, on a lot of levels, this doesn't matter. I mean, if you have e5 prepared, your opponent's going to be surprised no matter what. But we're talking Sam's like 2700 now. Awonder, of course, is quite a strong GM in his own right, moving up the ranks. And at their level, to not have prepared h3, I would say is maybe the start of his downfall. Of course, is his position lost right now? Of course not. But I'd say that this really started things going in the wrong way. He prepared e5 undoubtedly with a computer. The computer doesn't give h3 right away. It's one of those where if you leave it on a while, it certainly flirts with the move, and it definitely likes it, but it's not all that clear. Like takes on e5 and other options are pretty close, but from a human perspective, to face this move without preparation is extremely difficult. So he already makes a mistake, but honestly, to have to find the correct continuation here is just very difficult to do practically. So his mistake was not the way he thought about this position. This is a tough position. Any human being would probably make a mistake here. His mistake was that he didn't prepare this ahead of time. If you prepare such a sharp move as e5, you have to prepare for h3. And he just didn't quite do his homework. And again, on a lot of levels, you get away with it. You're playing, if Awonder were playing another GM about 2550, maybe this would work. Maybe he'd already surprised his opponent. But you're playing at 2700, pretty much, who is extremely well prepared in the opening. Sam's known for his preparation. It's just not a good idea. And of course, he's on less familiar terrain. So it's very difficult. Because I can tell you that even though Sam doesn't play the system all the time, he had this really well mapped out. So h3 is a very nasty move to face. And already, black really only has one move to try to make a good fight of this, or at least not just be worse. So the idea of this move is that if, say, black moves the bishop back to e6, now you can just take this pawn. And there's no pin. If the bishop moves back to d7 or c8, it's very ugly. So this just doesn't really work out. White's just up a pawn. If bishop h5, you can even take on b7 because now there's no bishop dropping back to block this check. So this is just not a great position. Probably rook c8, and you can just grab this pawn. Black's in huge trouble. So the best move, it turns out, is actually knight a5, which is really out there. He played e takes f4 in the game, and we'll examine the differences. But the idea of knight a5 is that now the queen is forced away. You can't throw in this check because the bishop blocks, and then the bishop on f4 is still hanging. So queen would go back to c2. Now you take the bishop, takes here, and believe it or not, you can actually grab this pawn. Now white gets lots of compensation. For example, you could try queen e2 check, forking the king and knight. You must block with the queen to keep the pin. And then knight h3. And okay, that pawn's going to drop. Probably I would still take white, but it's still an unclear position. But okay, to find moves like knight a5 and queen e7, it's just not very human. I mean, obviously you can find it if you calculate it, but it's really difficult. These are not easy moves to make, especially when you know your opponent's in prep. And Sam blitzed out h3, so Awonder knew he was kind of walking into it. So he played e takes f4, which is very logical. But after h takes g4, I actually think practically what black's already quite a bit worse. And that may seem kind of drastic, but basically, if black can't grab this pawn, which is kind of hard to do now because b7 hangs already, it's just really difficult to play. This pawn structure is really nasty. f4 is weak, d5 is a weak long-term weakness. I would say the light square bishop is quite a bit better than the dark square bishop. And black's king also doesn't know where to go. Castling kingside looks very risky. Queenside also looks like in the long term it could be unsafe. So I think that from a practical point of view, it's already extremely difficult to play for black. Not to mention that objectively also it's just worse. So I wouldn't say that the openings have as much of a bearing on the game as a lot of people think. There are so many games where the opening has almost nothing to do with it. But in this particular game, against the level of play Sam was showing in his preparation, the opening almost decided the game. Because now, Awonder has to take on this really difficult task of defending against a strong player from such a difficult position. And again, it's one of those which practically is as difficult to play as it is objectively. Meaning that it's even if he, is determined to play good defense, which I'm sure he was, it's so hard to do here. So he plays queen e7 check. King f1, which might be a surprising move, but the king is actually rather safe there. And note how you don't have to castle to develop this rook. This rook on h1 is already developed on this h-file. So black can try grabbing this pawn, but honestly, even if white just develops, and then either knight h3 or knight f3 or just simple moves, like black has nowhere to safe to go. Kingside is not safe, queenside is not really safe. Maybe he should try grabbing this pawn just so he has something to suffer for, but honestly, this is very difficult to play. He castled queenside. Knight d2. And already, it's just a tough life. Notice how taking the pawn now is ill-advised due to this check, winning a piece. So what do? He plays g6 to try to blunt the bishop. Very logical. Rook e1. Queen c7. So Sam decides he's had enough of this hanging pawn. He plays g5. Knight h5. And again, white has many choices. So this is one of the moments where I asked Sam kind of what was up, because in this moment he played bishop e2, which, I thought he might just develop, which is maybe okay. But the idea of bishop e2 is that he wanted to not allow h6. And he admitted that maybe it's not even strictly speaking best, but just from a human perspective, allowing h6 is really not a great idea, because then at least black gets rid of this potential weakness and also, activates this rook on the h-file. So he plays this and then knight f3. So I thought for sure a move like this was coming, trying to target this pawn. But I talked to Sam about this a little bit, and I definitely am just off base, because the fact is that this pawn is just not that important. You play king b8, you can't even take it because of knight a5. And now this knight on g1 does not have a happy square. g5 is quite weak. So this is already not the right idea. So Sam played knight gf3, knight e6, and now bishop b5. And this move really surprised me during the game. And it's not altogether obvious. I mean, taking this knight doesn't look like, whoa, you're really giving up a bishop for this knight already? Like, maybe you strengthen d5? Like, what's going on? But this is where the difference between, say, a GM of my level or, you know, somewhere around there and someone who prepares like Sam does, he was still in his prep. Now, in his prep means several things. For a lot of people, it's really like, okay, you prepare some line and then you're done. But for very strong players, and this is true of GMs who are weaker than this as well, it's not just all of them, and even international masters, FMs, like, there are plenty of people who have deeper prep than just a bunch of moves, which of course I recommend. But it's more that he still knew what his ideas were. And one of the things he told me was that control over e5 is extremely important here. Which is that if you can take on c6 and land a knight on e5, your position's going to be very, very good. Because f7 is weak, the queen doesn't have anywhere great to go. It's just an extremely unpleasant situation. So he was familiar with this idea already, and he knew that targeting d5 was the incorrect idea, which at least was my instinct, was to target d5. So not only is Awonder facing an uphill battle just positionally, but his opponent is still in knowledge. And even if he didn't know this exact position, which he didn't, it's not like he was still in book, but he still was armed with ideas. And if I can recommend anything when your guys are preparing your openings, it's that you want to make sure you are armed with ideas even after your moves run out. You could be completely out of your book, you can be out of your zone, but you still want to know exactly what your ideas are. And this is, I'd say, the difference between, you know, say super Grandmaster prep and prep that's not quite as thorough. So a lot of it is really about knowing all of your ideas. And clearly in this position, Awonder was not familiar with this h3 idea, so already he was on his own. It's a tricky idea, but again, if you're armed with a computer, you should be aware of it. But just because of that, he finds himself in such a difficult position. So he plays bishop g7. It's kind of an ugly move, hitting this pawn chain. But at the same time, what else is he going to do? He wants to control the e5 square. So here, Sam told me he was thinking about forcing things with bishop c6, queen c6, knight e5. To me, this is very illogical because trading all these pieces, to me, at least seems to help black, just from a strategic point of view. But what's really funny is here, so he was worried about knight d4, which maybe is a little bit dangerous. But believe it or not, you can even play this move. And the idea is that after here, and this rook is actually rather embarrassed on g4. So obviously this is a little bit far afield, but he kind of didn't like the look of those lines and avoided it. To me, like bishop takes c6 would be very out there. But Sam found a very annoying idea. He played queen a4. So of course, bishop takes c6 with a7 being weak. You really don't want to have to take with the b pawn, because then your king's going to be weak forever. So Awonder plays rook d6. So again, so far he's really managing the situation well. I mean, he has an ugly position, but he's playing good moves. He's hanging in there. But knight b3, Sam cranks up the pressure again. Knight c5 is possible. And here, Awonder really flinched. So I'm not going to say that I would have done it better, that most players even would do it better. When you're under extreme pressure, again, facing the hot player of the tournament, it's always tough because they're playing with so much confidence. Even if they're not playing amazing moves, sometimes you actually feel like they are. I've been in this situation where you're playing someone who's just wrecking a tournament, and it just feels like everything they're doing is going to work out, which, let me tell you, is not always the most pleasant. So in this situation, it's easy to kind of panic and be like, I'm not really sure, don't know what to do, and to kind of be like, well, I can't allow knight c5, so he plays b6. To me, though, I don't want to say it's like resigning, because that's an extreme statement, but now that the light squares are also extremely weak, it just creates another problem that you're going to have to solve miles down the road. And already you have a weak f4 pawn, you have a weak d5 pawn. This h7 pawn, by the way, is also quite weak, which is very annoying because it's hard to find time to ever play h6 and get rid of that weakness. So here already, I would have tried to maybe kick the bishop, just to at least say to white, look, you got to decide whether you want to take that knight or not. Make a decision. So Sam told me he was going to take. And here, if you consult a computer, it'll be like, oh, knight c5, you trade off this guy, everything's weak, your pieces are coming in. But to me, this is allowing a lot of play. And it's not necessarily something that's a very human thing to do. Sam's move was actually knight c1. And again, computer will not say this is best, but I really like this approach, which is that if your opponent has lots of weaknesses, you want them to stew. What I mean by that is, you don't want to take away their weaknesses. The second you go for a forcing line, if it wins, it wins. I'm not saying, oh, if you can win a queen by force, you don't do it. That's ridiculous. What I'm saying is that if you think that the waters are kind of murky after a move like knight c5, and you're like, I'm not sure what to do, it's almost always better to just build. And you kind of let your opponents sit with their weaknesses. Because, again, for a computer, it's not a problem, but for a human being to play with pawns on f4 or d5, h7, to have no piece coordination. Look, I mean, this bishop and g7 and knight on e6 may look okay, but they're biting granite on d4. What are they doing? It's just so difficult to play, and it's easy to play a move like Awonder did with b6, to just weaken yourself even further. Because human beings, it's just very difficult to play with weaknesses. When you have to defend so many guys, when you have to do so much, it just makes your life so much harder. So even if knight c1 is not objectively best, I really like this approach. And I think this is something new. I think Sam used to be a more forcing player. He was really attracted to lines where he was dictating the action, which sometimes, of course, is very strong. But I think that one of the things that he's developed, which has, made him certainly a force to be reckoned with, is that he can be patient as well now. And I think this patient approach in this situation is very difficult. Of course, keep in mind that because Awonder has so many problems to solve, his clock's ticking. And if he gets into time pressure with weaknesses and a bad position, that's when people, even very strong players, fall apart. And after b6, honestly, there just wasn't much to say. White withdraws the knight. Again, notice he's in no rush whatsoever. Computer likes knight e5. Take, rook back, knight d4. It's like, yeah, you're in. If knight takes knight, you take with the pawn and the c file. You have so many good looking options, but you're forcing action, and things can go wrong here. If you don't calculate properly, if something goes astray, you can actually have an accident in a position like this. It's happened all too many times. And the temptation to go really to play like very forcing when you think you're winning is so huge. And again, you calculate. If you calculate a winning line, you don't want to not play it. That's just a bad policy. But it has to be clear. And for some reason, Sam decided, I'm not so sure. I mean, this looks strong, but I just want to play slow. Let black stew with the weaknesses. And again, from Awonder's point of view, like, what are we going to do? He doesn't play perfectly from here on out. I'm going to say that. I mean, he makes mistakes. But the fact is that he had lost this game already. Against an opponent of this caliber who's playing this strong, you're basically lost. And the reason why is because you just have too many weaknesses. You have too many issues. And if your opponent is just cranking up the pressure on you, again, for a computer, they can hang on. The computers can make trouble. They can do things. A human being is basically helpless because it's just so hard to actually play this position with your clock ticking. So mistakes that Awonder may have made from now on, maybe he could play better, maybe he could do better. But honestly, again, if I were talking to him about it, I'd be like, look, don't worry about it from here on. I mean, you can defend like a maniac. But even like the elite defenders of the world, the Karyakins, would probably just lose this position every time if they're playing people of same strength. It's just too much. So his mistakes really came from earlier, both in terms of opening choice, opening preparation, and then this b6 move. Before b6, he at least has chances. But it's so easy to play a move like b6 if knight c5 is annoying you that it's easy to forget, well, the long-term ramifications of this move are just really bad. Because b6 may have prevented knight c5, but it allows everything else. You can't get rid of this bishop now. This queen and bishop are just going to stay here forever. And this is just really nasty. So let me just show you the end of the game. I don't want to focus too much on it because I think that mostly things are done. So Awonder tries to play a6. Sam doesn't let him. And finally, he plays knight e5. Notice how you can't even take it because your rook gets trapped, which is rather embarrassing. Highlighting another weakness. And here, Awonder already has to make a huge decision. So he plays here, which is nice as far as guarding d5. But remember how I mentioned the multiple weaknesses? This is why multiple weaknesses are so hard to play with. Because if you just have to defend one weakness, often you can do it. If you have several, if you have light squares weak, d5, h7, you just can't. It's impossible. So he drops this pawn. And from here on out, it's just bad news. It's really painful to have to play these positions. Again, I think if you're younger, it's easier because they're like, well, it's a bad position. What are you going to do? I think when you get more experienced and you have more, you know how these positions work, every move you're just like, oh, this is so much pain. But when you're young, it's easier to brush it off. So he has that going for him. So a3, so now b4 is going to be rather nasty in some positions. So finally, he trades off the bishop, but he gets a knight to e5, which is very strong. And once he penetrates the position, he still needs some technique, but black is simply down too much material. 2 pawns, and white still has really active pieces, a weakness on d5. He just has to make sure he gets his king in, which he does, and Awonder even calls it quits right away. Knight takes d5 is already a threat. This king is almost getting mated. It's about time to throw in the towel, I would say. So with this, Sam clinched his US championship. Awonder had a disappointing end to what was otherwise a really nice tournament. And again, this game doesn't take away anything from what he's achieved. I mean, okay, he became a gem, at age 14. I mean, something like this. He's still on the rise. He's still playing really well. But there's still a lot to learn from this loss. And a lot of it did occur in the opening. So I'd say that the idea of playing the Caro-Kann when your knowledge is not quite there. I mean, again, he had some knowledge. Clearly, he had this e5 move, but he didn't have deep knowledge. Whereas Sam really knew the position well, not just the opening, but what happens afterwards, and was armed with more ideas. So the element of the temptation to surprise your opponent in the opening can be really great. But especially if you're facing someone who's well prepared, you have to have it a little bit deeper. You have to know exactly what you're doing, not just in the opening, but in the middle game as well. And after that, it was really just a difficult situation. And he had that one moment where he flinched with b6. If he had played a6, kept his position more or less solid, so he only had d5 was a weakness and h7, he may have had holding chances. But once he created more weaknesses with the move b6, his life was basically, it was basically done, the game. Because just when you have that many weaknesses, you can't play chess well. And not only is your position bad, but you're going to make errors. And it's not, again, it doesn't take away anything from the player. Any player, any human being, Magnus Carlsen would make errors in that position. Because you just have too many weaknesses. It's too hard to hold everything. So I guess the main lesson is that, if you're in a situation which is so difficult, you have to at least try to keep your weaknesses to a minimum, to force your opponent to beat you by force, or to calculate an attack out, or to at least do something. If you just add to the weakness total, your position just gets worse and worse, and you often never get counterplayed because you're just defending your weaknesses all game. So again, I thought it was fairly instructive, a really well-played game by White. And again, for Awonder, I think it's a really good lesson that he learned from this game, and I'm sure that he's gonna take those lessons well. And again, he's definitely a player to watch out for. So, definitely he will improve on this. And I have to say, I've lost embarrassingly in the last round of the U.S. Championship more than once. So he's certainly not alone on this one. In any case, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Again, I'm working with a new computer. I'm hoping if there are technical issues, I'll get them worked out. But definitely leave comments. Let me know if there are other games you want to see. And I will talk to you guys next week. For those of you who haven't caught my other lectures, you can probably find them on YouTube. You can find them on my Facebook page. I'll provide links on Twitter. So definitely you can discover my other material. So thank you again, and see you guys later.